So, you're here because you're either having a midlife crisis at age 19, or you've spent the last 3 hours staring at a broken toaster, convinced that you're just one gentle hammer strike away from being the next Nikola Tesla. Or, more likely, your parents told you that being an artist doesn't pay for health insurance, and engineer sounded like a safe bet. But relax, this isn't going to be one of those boring checklists like, are you good at math, or do you like numbers? Engineering is way deeper than being the kid who finishes the calculus homework first. A lot of people choose engineering for the title, the salary, or the stability, but very few choose it because they genuinely can't stop thinking about how things work. And that difference, it shows. It shows at 2 a.m. during exam week. It shows when your design fails for the third time. And it definitely shows when everyone else wants to give up, but you're weirdly excited to try one more fix. Before you commit 4 to 5 years of your life to drinking lukewarm coffee and questioning every life choice you've ever made while staring at a calculus textbook, let's see if you actually have the DNA for this. Because engineering isn't just about hard hats and looking important on a construction site. It's a specific mental state where you can't look at a door handle without wondering why the pivot point is so inefficient. 1. You see problems where others see peace. Most people walk into a room, flip a light switch, and if the light comes on, they're happy. If it doesn't, they call someone like you. But if you're an engineer at heart, you're the person who flips the switch and spends the next 10 minutes wondering about the tactile feedback of the plastic, the specific gauge of the copper wiring behind the drywall, and why on earth the previous owner thought a dimmable switch was necessary for a closet. You have this annoying, restless urge to optimize things that aren't even broken. There's this famous observation in the tech world. A great engineer is someone who is fundamentally lazy but hates inefficiency. You aren't lazy in the sense of doing nothing. You're lazy in the sense that you will spend 6 hours writing a script to automate a task that takes 10 minutes just so you never have to do the manual labor again. If you find yourself looking at a long queue at a grocery store and instinctively calculating the throughput of the cashiers versus the arrival rate of the customers, congratulations, you're already doing industrial engineering for free. You might be a nightmare to go on a date with, but you're a natural at the job. 2. The Legos to reality pipeline. Remember when you were a kid and you didn't just build the Lego castle according to the instructions. You built it, looked at it for 5 seconds, and then immediately tore it apart because you realized the drawbridge mechanism was structurally unsound. Real engineers never truly grow out of the "I wonder what's inside this" phase. There's this legendary story about a young James Watt who supposedly sat in his mother's kitchen watching a boiling tea kettle. Most kids see steam. Watt saw a wasted energy source and eventually went on to refine the steam engine that literally powered the Industrial Revolution. If you've ever taken apart a remote control just to see the green circuit board and then actually managed to put it back together without having extra parts left over, you have the spatial reasoning required for this field. If you did have extra parts left over and the remote still worked, well, then you're a genius because you just practiced cost reduction and material optimization without even trying. 3. You have a toxic relationship with logic. For most people, "because I said so" or "that's just how it's always been done" are perfectly acceptable answers. For an engineer, those words are a declaration of war. You need to know the why behind the what. You're the person who reads the manual not because you're a rule follower, but because you want to find the loopholes and understand the limits of the machine. There was a study by researchers at the University of Kansas that looked into engineering mindsets, and they found that the most successful students weren't necessarily the ones who were best at math, but the ones who possessed high need for closure. This doesn't mean you're organized. It means you can't stand an unsolved puzzle. It's that itch in our brain that won't go away until the bridge stands or the code compiles. If you can sit in front of a computer screen for 5 hours looking for a single missing semicolon and feel a genuine sense of euphoria when you finally find it, you're in the right place. Most people would call that a waste of time, an engineer calls it a Tuesday. Because at some point, frustration turns into focus. The outside world disappears. It's just you and the problem. And weirdly enough, that's peaceful. If solving a logic puzzle feels more relaxing than scrolling social media, that's a sign. 4. You're the functional friend. In a group of friends, there's always the one who plans the trip, the one who brings the snacks, and the one who everyone turns to when the Airbnb's Wi-Fi stops working. If you are the person who people call when things get real, you might have the temperament. Engineering is essentially professional firefighting, but instead of water, you use math and logic to stop the building from falling down in the first place. Think about the 1970 Apollo 13 mission. When the oxygen tank exploded, the engineers back on Earth didn't panic and write poetry about the fragility of life. They sat in a room with a pile of random junk, duct tape, plastic bags, and flight manuals, and figured out how to fit a square carbon dioxide scrubber into a round hole using only what the astronauts had on board. That is the essence of the job, solving impossible problems with limited resources while everyone else is screaming. If you're the person who stays calm when the IKEA shelf is missing 3 screws and you somehow use a butter knife and a hair tie to make it sturdy, you've got the gene. 5. You actually like making things better, even if it's hard. The world is full of people who complain about how things work. The transit system is slow, the phone battery dies too fast, the bridge is ugly. Engineers are the only ones who look at those complaints and think, I could probably fix that, but I'm going to need a bigger budget and a lot of caffeine. There's a quote by the engineer and educator Theodore von Karman. Scientists study the world as it is. Engineers create the world that has never been. If you find more satisfaction in the process of building something than in the finished product itself, that's the final sign. Engineering is 90% trial and error. Your first design will break, your first code will crash, your first circuit will smell like burnt toast. But if you're the type of person who finds that failure interesting rather than soul-crushing, if you look at a collapsed bridge and think, oh, I wonder where the stress point was, then you're one of us. You're ready to join the ranks of people who keep the world running while everyone else just complains that the 5G is too slow. So, did you check at least 3 of those boxes? If you did, you should probably start looking at university rankings or at least buy a nicer screwdriver set. It's a long road, and your social life might take a hit, but at least you'll know exactly why your car is making that weird clicking sound. Since you're looking for content that hits home for students globally, would you like me to add a section about the specific struggle of engineering physics or the nightmare of group projects to make it even more relatable? If you saw yourself in at least a few of these signs, maybe engineering isn't just a safe option. Maybe it's how your brain naturally works. And if it didn't, that's fine too. Better to figure it out now than halfway through thermodynamics. If this helped you think a little clearer about your future, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. We talk about majors, careers, and all the academic chaos in between. See you in the next one.